In today's video, we are going to continue from where we left off in our previous discussion on D and I and dive into a number of important terms in genetics. These include alleles, dominant and recessive traits, homozygous and heterozygous combinations, and also the difference between genotype and phenotype. By the end of this lesson, you should have a much clearer understanding of how our genetic traits are inherited and expressed. Now, all of these ideas are closely related to genes. A gene is essentially a segment of DNA that contains the coded instructions to produce a particular kind of protein. Together, the genes we inherit from our biological parents help determine the various characteristics we display, such as eye color, hair type, and blood group. Some of these characteristics are controlled by a single gene, such as fur color in mice or red-green color blindness in humans. However, most of our traits are polygenic, meaning they are controlled by multiple genes working together. For instance, height is influenced by a combination of many different genes, which is one reason why people come in all different shapes and sizes. Going back to our gene definition, it is important to understand that a gene codes for a specific type of protein. But there is often more than one version of that protein, and as a result, there is more than one possible code or sequence for that protein. These different versions of a gene are called alleles. You can think of alleles as alternate forms of the same gene. Because every person has two copies of each gene, one inherited from their mother and one from their father, it means we all carry two alleles for every gene. These two alleles might be exactly the same, or they might be different. If both alleles are the same, we call that combination homozygous. If the alleles are different, we say the person is heterozygous for that gene. Now, this can lead to an interesting situation. Imagine a mouse with one allele for purple fur and one for green fur. Since this mouse is heterozygous, we now have to ask which fur color will actually appear. The fur will not be a mix of purple and green. Instead, only one allele will be expressed. That is because one allele is dominant while the other is recessive. The dominant allele is the one that shows up in the organism's physical traits, while the recessive allele is essentially hidden unless both copies of the gene are recessive. In this example, if the purple allele is dominant and the green allele is recessive, then the mouse will appear purple even though it carries both alleles. In fact, the only way a green fur color would show is if the mouse had two copies of the green allele, making it homozygous recessive. The purple allele, by contrast, will always be expressed if present, whether the mouse is heterozygous or homozygous for purple fur. Now we come to two final terms that are commonly used in genetics, and that is genotype and phenotype. The genotype is the complete set of alleles that an organism has, essentially its genetic makeup. So let us return to our mouse example and consider three types of mice: one that is heterozygous with one purple and one green allele, one that is homozygous dominant with two purple alleles, and one that is homozygous recessive with two green alleles. Even though some of these mice look the same, they all have different genotypes because the combinations of alleles are not the same. On the other hand, phenotype refers to the actual physical appearance or characteristics that result from the genotype. So in this case, both the heterozygous mouse and the homozygous dominant mouse will look purple, which means they have the same phenotype even though their genotypes are different. Meanwhile, the homozygous recessive mouse, which is green in color, has both a different genotype and a different phenotype. In summary, genotype is about the genetic code an organism carries, while phenotype is the observable traits that arise from those genes. Understanding how alleles interact and how they lead to different phenotypes helps explain the wide range of variation we see in living things.